Hetep, peace and greetings. This is your brother Kenim Ura, Ma'at Tahuti Amen. I'm just trying to tell y'all some truth. Here's a chronological order type situation right here. See, I go off the head. I don't have a whole bunch of papers and stuff in front of me or nothing, so a lot of things that I remember, I be forgetting. So it's not really forgetting, it's just that I have so wealth of information in my head that I need to try to get out in such a short period of time, and I try to put it in a format that you don't fall asleep or that you lose interest. So when I go off the head, just be bearing with me. Chronological order. 1492 was a year. It was a very important year. Why? Because that was the year that the Spaniard broke off away from the Moorish Empire. The same Moorish Empire that brought them out of the Dark Ages. Okay? They still give credit to the Rock of Gibraltar as something very majorly. It's a historical site. But what they don't tell you is that it's a corruption of Jabal al-Tariq, who was the Zaid Jabal al-Tariq, who was the general who led the Africans, Berbers, and Arabs into what is called Spain or Hispania. And basically, they conquered them. Brought them out of the Dark Ages. If you know any writings of anything prior to that, they will all tell you that anywhere in Europe was disgusting. And I'm just being frank. They had straw hay, pit-smelling villages. They didn't know how to bury their dead. They basically had a big latrine in the middle of their streets. So you have houses on both sides or huts on both sides of the street, and there'd be a latrine in the middle of the streets that people threw their garbage and fecal matters and waste matter and all that there. So you would smell this stench from 5 miles. And this is documented history. This is not somebody just ranting and raving. This is documented facts. Now, past that, 1492, we'll just say that they had all the technology, sciences, and maths that we already know through history, and history has proven that the Moors brought to them. Now, when the Moors started arguing and fighting with the Arabs over doctrines and different translations of the Quran, that is when they started fighting and killing, because we know they don't just argue, they fight and kill. Now, while they fighting and killing, these downtrodden people, these Europeans that were brought out of the Dark Ages, found that they had one thing in common, that they were the ones who were conquered. So then they started banding together. They built their numbers and strength, and long story short, they got enough power, and the Castilian Empire pushed the Moors back. That's why in Granada, the last battle was called the last sigh of the Moors, because the general's mother said, "It is right that you should cry like a woman for what you could not protect like a man." Now, 1492, I'll stick to the point. 1492 in chronological order to 1798 was when Napoleon entered into Egypt with astronographers, geologists, archaeologists, physicists. I mean, any type of scientific person you could think of, he sent down there. There was over 167 of these different types of foremost minds that was sent into Kemet. They were looking for something. And when they found something that was very, very important, it was called the Rosetta Stone. This was telling about Ptolemy and Berenice, his wife. But anyways, it was telling about something that happened to do in 200 BC. Now, this is not the first Ptolemy that they're speaking about. But point, I'm going to stay on track because that's a lot of different information. That's how I was saying I get off track sometimes. But I'm back. The fact is, there was 3 languages. This is what they were called. The first language on top was called Holy. That was hieroglyph. The second language was called Demotic, or the native. The third language was called Barbaric, and it was Greek. Now, this is how they were able to decipher through this language the code for the hieroglyph, or the Medu Neter, which is the word of God, or words of God. Now, look at 1492. See, it was not deciphered all the way until John Francis Champollion and Thomas Young, I believe. Thomas Young didn't do it, but John Francis Champollion, he actually deciphered it, the code, in 1822. Now there was a dispute about that because Young was trying to say that he copied sort of his patterns and that is how he did it, but Young did not do it. He put a paper out saying that he cracked the code, but he had not actually cracked the code. The code hadn't been cracked until 1822. Now 1822, follow me, till 1940 something, almost 50. That's like a little bit over 100 years. Do chronological order. Find out the technological jump from 1492 to 1822 and see what was the advancement. What was the major advancement from 1492 to 1822? It really was not that much major. They didn't have anything major more than what they had in 1492 to 1822. Now you go from 1822 to 1950 or 1948, 46, 47, all those years when World War II was going on, a little bit after World War I, which in fact was started because of the Rosetta Stone. Why? Because in 1884 there was a council, there was a meeting of all the Germanic peoples. I don't know why we keep splitting them up, calling them Europe. They're all one people, Germanic peoples, except one stuck with the name Germany. These people had the Berlin Conference and they chopped up Africa like a cake, each one taking their piece, they with disregard for what the Africans cared for or wanted to know. All this information is privy to all of us. This is not something I'm telling you that is unknown. Everyone knows this information, but most people don't care to look. Now, 1822 to 1884 was when Sir Francis Galton and all these different great minds, Darwin's, all the rest of these brilliant minds were coming down into Kemet, learning about this and learning about that. You see, they were doing a lot of searching for things that they didn't know. They were trying to find themselves in history. They were trying to find faces and features that fit theirs, which is the reason why Napoleon was blowing off the faces and the noses, because the spirit is in, they said the spirit is in the breath of the nostrils. The spirit is the breath of the nostrils. What did he do? He breathed his eternal spirit into the man to create life. The nostrils. So if you blow off the nose, you destroy that spirit. At least that is what is thought. But my point is, they found people who didn't look like them, and they couldn't understand, for the love of God, how is it that the people that look like the slave, the bottom of the barrel, the people that we mistreat and throw around, and we don't even care for what they eat, how they smell, their hygiene, their living conditions, or anything. How did these people create these things? Well, there's inscriptions that tell you that we come from where the Nile begins. And the Tamarians, you don't call people by nothing but what they call themselves. Tawi, Kemet, or Tamari. Simple as that. Those people proudly claim their ancestry comes from where the Nile begins, which is 4,700 miles into the interior of Africa. That is Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, and the Blue Nile goes to Ethiopia and Sudan. Now in the Bible, these are one of the two major rivers in the Garden of Eden. Now what we do know is that the North Kingdom, which is actually the Southern Kingdom, could not have anything without that Nile, without the source of the Nile. The source dries up, everything upstream, because the Nile flows south to north, shuts down. And they needed that black soot and soil to maintain, or there will be years of famine and there will be years of plenty. Imhotep did it twice in 3000 BC, before Joseph the provider, before there was an Abraham. Imhotep did it twice. He went to the source of the Nile on the third time that it happened to beseech and beg the spirit of the Nile, who was called Khnum, or Knemu, which is the father of fathers, mother of all mothers, the ancient one, the ancient of days, the elder, the first, the creator. He went to him to ask him, and upon talking to the creator, he was told to renovate the temples and rebuild the temples, and I will give the land sustenance again. And he did this, and the land became wealthy again. Now my point, like I was trying to tell you before, is that if they boasted that they come from where the Nile begins, and we know the Nile begins in the interior of Africa, why is it that they try to tell you that the southern kingdom, which is the northern kingdom, predates the upper kingdom, which was the southern kingdom? It doesn't make sense to me if the lower kingdom, which is the northern kingdom, is claiming ancestry from the south. How could it be that scientists, or not scientists, I'll say archaeologists and so-called historians, are trying to give credit to those up north, unless it's once again racial historical profiling? That is somebody putting a contemporary train of thought into the past that was not and could not or never had a place there in the first place. Now the technology jumps. If you do your research and your homework from 1822 all the way to 1950, when that atomic bomb, 1940s, when that atomic bomb blasted, look at the jump in technology. All this has to do with Kemet. All this has to do with Africans. Why do you think that the Nile River, each pyramid that goes from the bottom to the top, matches up with star systems? Even the cluster pyramids match up with star clusters in the Milky Way galaxy. You can go find all this in observatories. You can find this in science books. You can find all this information. People try to keep it away from you. They put it in universities and labs and all this, and try to tell you that you have to pay to keep you from it, to deter you from obtaining knowledge that was your ancestors. See, as African ascended people, we should never have to pay for colleges. Why? Because the knowledge that came and created those colleges come from our ancestors within, and all we had to do was show an interest in our societies. We didn't have to pay interest. We had to show an interest, and you would be taken away from the group, and you would be put into the school system, so to speak. And you would learn and learn and learn and learn. See, we never separated spirituality from natural. That's only these unnatural people who came after us that want to separate spirituality from natural. That's why they came to you and told you was naked. But you weren't raping women. You weren't touching little girls. See, all these things are things that you assumed that you did because you have known nothing else other than what this enemy has been doing. All these different enemies who came. Man, you got the Ottoman Empire, these Turks, these same people who usurped the Judaic faith are the same people who usurped the Islamic faith. These are the same people that was in Zanzibar enslaving Africans. The same people who made a treaty with their so-called Christian most hated enemy, the Portuguese. While the Portuguese and the Spaniards were fighting over the west and east coast of Africa, and the Pope, you got Eugene, you got Nicholas, and you got Martin. All three of these popes back to back ordained and issued documents and decrees that said that we have to reduce to perpetual servitude all those inhabitants as what? Enemies of Christ. Now, what African man or in the tongue knew anything about a Christ other than cursed, which was Al-Sa? That's K-R-S-T. The first resurrected. The only resurrected. See, we got people that are taking our stories, our Kemetic ancestral stories that they got from the same stories in Uganda. Ask yourself this question. How come you can't say Olorun or Unkulunkulu or Mungu or Nananyami or Auradi? Why are you not allowed?